Hey everybody, welcome to this testimonial video for Secrets of Storytelling Mastermind. I'm really excited to get to talk to my client Meg Malik. So Meg, welcome.
Hello.
Excited to have you. So I would love if you would start off talking a little bit about how you first came across me, because I believe that you came to my masterclass at the start of the year about planning your brave writing practice. And then you signed up for the mastermind like really quickly. So could you talk a little bit about like what the masterclass was like and and what drew you to the mastermind and how you knew that it was a good fit for you?
Sure. So I think it's important to know that a friend of mine has or had, I don't know the right verb, worked with you, Brooke, before,
Yeah.
and she does her own writing thing in the area that I live and had invited me like 2 years ago. And at
Mm.
that stage in my life, I was like, no, no. I've always written kind of privately on the side. And then she posted the link to the master class.
Mhm.
I signed up and I did it. And I was like, I felt a little that voice that's like, yes, this might be for you. It's
Yay.
like, there's something here. And so I reached back out to my friend and I said, hey, I've been working on writing through, journaling through some of the process of grieving the deaths of my parents. The writing seems like it wants to go beyond me in a way I've never done before.
Mm.
What do you think about this? And she said, yes, you should do it. And
Oh.
so I was like, okay, this feels like a big risk. And it just something said, yes, do it. I
Mm.
did. Well, I emailed you first to say, hey, I'm not a writer. I don't have a book. I don't know if I have a book. I have some writing, but I think I have something to say. Would this work for me? And you said,
Yeah.
yes, you are okay. It's not like people are coming in with formed books.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that everything that you just said is like exactly the kind of person that I want in the mastermind, right? Which is like, first of all, I will say like a lot of my clients come to me by referral, which is such an honor that like people that work with me tell their friends about me. Like that just means so much to me. And also that like you kind of were like, oh, let me sign up for this. And then that little voice was like, yes, this might be for you. Right. So I think that that's just such a beautiful unfolding of like, and then again, we had a conversation and it's so interesting to me, like the people who email me to ask if they're a good fit are like 90% of the time are like a good fit, but it's so beautiful because it's like, because they always have the same questions like you just described of like, this is what I'm writing. And like, will other people be farther ahead than me? Like, are other people like more serious writers, right? Or like, whatever it is. But it's always some flavor of that. Like, am I okay? Is my book okay? Like, would my idea work? Like, and it's always people who are writing about, like you're describing, like you're writing about grieving the deaths of your parents, and other people are writing, like a lot of people that come to me are writing through, um, are kind of processing trauma, but not only like, I think there's a space to use writing to process trauma, certainly.
Yes.
And most people that come to me are sort of on the other side of like, they've used writing to process their own trauma, and now they're writing something different, which is maybe for an eventual reader, right? Which I think is a different process, and they're both important. But I would say the mastermind is more for the latter, right? So for people who are like kind of through a little bit of the most intense grief or trauma, and are sort of like, how can I use this experience either to reach out to others or to write something that might help somebody else, or to like write my story for other people to read. And I think that that is, yeah, so a lot of folks are kind of in that space. Tell us a little bit about what has your experience been of the mastermind in terms of creating your writing practice and meeting with an editor. Like, tell us a little bit about how the experience has been.
First, affirming, really. And I say
Mhm.
that because I have a practice in the morning. Journaling was part of it prior to the
Mm.
mastermind.
Yeah.
And it helped me claim that space really as my own. And when it wasn't, to say, okay, now is going to be a time where I take an intentional pause, like around the
Mm.
anniversary of a death, say.
Yeah.
And so I think the mastermind helped me clarify and set intentions in a way that really honored my selfhood and my writing process in a way that helped me feel more empowered.
Mm.
Um, and so that
Yeah.
was really good. And so now that it's established, it's there, and really kind of committing to it in a big way. And I find that it's a resource. And
Mm.
so that's helpful.
Yeah. I love that.
Um, Meeting with an editor, I was so intimidated the first time, like the
Mm.
first submission. And I was like, oh my gosh, what is this going to be like? But it's been also so affirming
Mm.
to have, well, one, to have a reader.
Yeah.
For me, writing is really dialogical.
Mhm.
Even though the book isn't done, like I even talk with parts of myself as I write it, or spirit is kind of there. And so to have a human holding and reflecting back what they heard, how they heard it, how it landed on them, where they might have questions or want to know more, I
Yeah.
found has really helped me.
Mhm.
Um, and to say keep going.
Mm.
There is something here, kind of my intuitive sense of like, okay, wait a second, my writing, and this was happening at the end of 2022. It was like crossing over from that, like I'm writing myself out of
Yep.
my own thing to like, wait a second, this is like writing that I think wants to go to people outside of me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so to hear from the editor, yes, I see that. Keep going, keep going.
Yes, I love that so much. And I want to presence too, like, well, first of all, I love what you said about writing being really dialogical. And I think having someone else who's also kind of invested in your work, who's read your work and has that professional lens, right? Like I have friends who are writers and we bounce ideas, but it's different when I have like a formal relationship with someone who's like reading my work and they're, giving me feedback or being that sounding board. There's kind of a different like level to it and it is like so helpful. And I find that when I do that work with other authors too, it's sort of like um sometimes like they'll just be talking and talking and they'll be like, am I talking too much? And then they come away with like these huge aha moments or breakthroughs, right? Whatever it is. So I think that it is so important to have somebody that formal relationship, right? Where someone's bouncing ideas with. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really
Yeah.
helpful. Cool. All right. Talk to us also about like the experience of meeting every week. So the group meets live together every week for the 6 months. And that is a really important component to me as a creator because I have seen a lot of folks selling courses that are kind of asynchronous that don't have a live component. And I've taken a lot of those courses and I just never end up like being as invested as when I'm showing up every week and there's like a class and that, so tell us a little bit about that experience of meeting every week and sort of what the group work was like for you.
Yeah. So I guess I should say first, that was a hallmark that really invited me to say yes. I would
Mm,
not have said yes if it was the asynchronous, what you're describing.
yeah.
I can Google and do that for myself with myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
There is a mystery and a magic to a group of people being
Yeah.
together. And I also know about me, recovering kind of human giver syndrome person that I am.
Mm,
There's something about being accountable to a whole that helps me show up for myself too.
yeah.
So not only was I better able to hold my morning space, but I was like, no, this time on Thursdays is my time. I'm not going to give that away.
Yeah. Nice.
And that was really huge.
Mm,
I think because I'm not an author by profession,
mm,
seeing others who are to go like, oh, wait a second, there is a space for me too. And the
yeah.
similarity of the journeys. I mean, of course, everybody's journey is their own. And so I don't want to put mine or theirs on each other. But there is something too. Oh, here we are together, kind of in the middle of this wilderness of hearing our book spirit talk and discerning it. And there's a there's a sense of support and collegiality, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
from that. It also kind of helped pave the way for what was coming. I
Mm,
haven't been through the journey of publishing yet, but because you offered some uh, teaching us, but then also holding space for us with like, hey, so these are the things, I feel
mm-hmm.
like, okay,
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's so exciting. So what would you say are sort of like maybe some of your biggest takeaways from the 6 months? And like, what does your writing practice look like going forward?
Okay. One of my knowing that I need community.
Mm,
I knew that about myself, but this process really affirmed that. And
yeah.
so, I am getting connected with the London Writers group, and
Mm.
today was my first day in the
Oh,
morning. So my goal is to do 3 hours a week committed with them. So that's
mhm.
kind of answering backward of like, that's partly what my writing process looks like,
Mm,
because what I'm writing about needs me to dive in deeper now than it did initially.
yeah.
So I need a longer stint of time.
Mm,
In my half an hour, I really need an hour to really get in and then get back out.
yeah.
And I would say that leads into one of the takeaways, which is the process changes.
Yes.
I need for my writing changes, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And like really listening and trusting to my body's wisdom with that
Mm-hmm.
has been really helpful.
Yes.
Um, One of the other takeaways is it isn't like a checklist, and most other authors don't have writing be like a checklist either. Like I'm not
Mm,
feeling that I can't just like sit down, write a chapter that comes out in this neat, tidy order,
yes.
and there it goes. Because I think when I started, I thought the real writers wrote like this, and then
Mm-hmm.
there was me who writes in this very organic, circuitous process.
Yeah. Yeah.
There are other writers who write like me in this
Yeah.
organic, circuitous process, and that
Yeah.
doesn't mean I'm not a writer. It
Yes.
simply means I need to be aware of what that is, and that dialogical element.
Mm, I love this so much. And I want to presence, like, just pause over what you said and just say, like, if you are identifying with what's Megan's saying of like being this more circuitous writer, or like things come out and you're kind of exploring and you don't know where it's going, right? Like, that is the kind of writer that the mastermind is really built for. And there are a lot of other places where you can learn, like, if you're more of like a check the box or like want a format, like, that's not wrong. But I have never been able to write that way either. And I built the mastermind in part because I was like, I want to be around people who like work similar to how I do, which is like things come out and I explore, and then it takes me a long time. And also, I have made my peace with that. I'm not like a fast writer, and that's okay. It's like
And
part of the process.
it is, and I'm a fast reader.
Mm,
Like when I get reading, I can just absorb. I could spend a whole day reading a good book,
yeah, I love it.
but I'm not a fast writer.
Mm,
I'm just not.
yeah,
My process, it needs to percolate a little bit, and it
yeah,
feels like birthing as I do it.
yeah.
Um, and so the mastermind held space for that, validated that, and then introduced me to other people who are like, yeah, my process is similar to yours.
Yes. I love that so much. Yes. And so I've started calling this being like an intuitive writer, that like things come in through intuition or inspiration. But again, it's not always, it's not linear. It's not like you're not writing from start to finish. It's like there's sort of this spiraling happening where like different themes are surfacing, and right. And again, like sometimes things come up and you don't know where they're going. And right. And it's so fun. And also, if you're trying to do that inside the box of like I have to write in a linear way, it can be really frustrating. But if you're able to like step out of that altogether, it can be really fun, I think.
It, I can't say enough about how the whole process has helped me do that, because I've had a
Mhm.
lot of years of, in order to kind of work within the constructs that I've needed to work within professionally,
Yeah.
like I've had to check a little bit of that or figure out how to kind of get it to go in checklist order.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so there was a lot of deconstructing happening
Yeah.
with this with me.
Yeah. I love that. Deconstructing. It's so good. All right, beautiful. As we are wrapping up, any like words of wisdom or thoughts, if someone's watching this video and they're like, "Oh, I think this is for me, but I'm not totally sure," like, what would you say to folks as they're kind of mulling over that decision about joining the mastermind?
I think if they are really open to this being a whole body, mind, spirit process where their book
Mm,
is about so much more than just getting a book published, but about like, here's this whole thing that is going to teach me about me and then move forward. How could you say no?
oh my
Like,
gosh,
you
I
have
love
to say
it.
yes.
Yes. Well, let me ask you one other question, which is just like surfacing that it is a significant financial investment. This is not something where it's like a small investment and then you get like a digital course and right and you don't get a lot of right. It's high touch and high investment. And so I don't know, what would you say in terms of like looking back over the investment in terms of like what you came away with? Like I don't know, like what would you say to folks who are like, oh my gosh, but it's a lot of money and like, am I ready to really invest that in myself and my writing?
So, and I mean, I think that's a really an important thing to sit with
Yeah.
for people. For me, the
Mm,
financial investment was part of what helped me continue to show up.
yeah, I love that.
So if it were
Mhm.
less, I may not have shown up as much for myself and my writing.
Yeah.
And also, I'm not maybe throw him under the bus a little bit, but I'm married to a lovely, wonderful human.
Mhm.
And he's the only other human that I've let really see what I'm writing a little bit
Mhm.
of.
Yeah.
And he was like, when are you writing?
Mm,
Not in a like get at it, but in a like, right, I see how this investment in you is helping you, which
mm,
like I have your back and I want for you to do it. And I
yeah.
think if it wasn't as much of a financial investment, he wouldn't even necessarily have known. Like I had to kind of
Mm,
clear it because it was.
yeah. Yeah.
Um, and so I don't want to convey the idea that he was like, you need to get your money's worth. It wasn't that. It was
Yeah.
like, oh, this little writing gig isn't a secret anymore. It's like a little bit more public.
Hmm.
And so here I have my biggest champion as the mastermind has ended, asking me how I'm going to continue to show up for my writing.
Yeah. I love that. It's so good. And I love what you said about like if it had been less, right? Like that the amount of the investment was able to kind of be like, and now I'm showing up for everything, right? And your husband's like, like it's sort of recognizing that like this is important and this is like it's kind of a signal to yourself, like I'm taking this seriously. And that's how I felt when I did my MFA degree, which was, many times the investment of the mastermind. But like I was just like, this is the signal, I'm taking this seriously. This is like, right, like it's really important to me. And I think it can be really useful to kind of be that signal of
And
importance.
that is how I looked at it and what's keeping me going. I'm about 50% of the way through the book, I think.
Yeah.
And I think I would have quit sooner if I hadn't done the mastermind and or I'd be tempted to quit now.
Mm,
And I think because I've invested as much, you provided the resources. I'm like, no, this is and the editor saying like, no, you have something to say. Keep going.
yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I want to also surface what you just said about being 50% of the way through, right? So my whole thing is this is not a write your book in 6 months course. Like that is not what we're doing. And if like I have had like one or two people write a whole book in the 6 months where they were really like that was like the only thing they were focusing on in their life. But most people come away like somewhere 50%, like somewhere in the middle. Um, yeah. So, and I guess I don't even have a question, but I just wanted to surface that of like, this is not like, again, we're going to check the box and like, you're going to be done at draft. It's meant to really give you the tools that you need to kind of keep going as opposed to like, we're going to push through and get it all done, right? Like in this time container, it's sort of meant to like lay that foundation so that you have like a road to drive on, to mix
It
my metaphors.
it laid that, and I think for those of us that lean intuitive and more circular in our rhythms,
Yeah.
it really helped me say these structures that I've been making myself work in for years really aren't mine. And so
Mm,
I need to let that go for this to be the
nice.
most my book's voice doesn't want to be written in that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love it.
And this set that up. And so I feel much freer now when I'm writing. And it's funny, I've started to reread my draft, and this morning that was what I was doing. And I was like, wow, I can tell when I was starting, I was like, this is the story that should come here to start. And I'm like,
Mm,
I don't think maybe this, like, I don't even know, but I'm like, yeah. And then you can see and hear my intuitive voice starting to take over as it
Yeah.
goes, as the
Yeah.
draft goes along.
Oh my gosh, it's so good. Yeah.
Uh,
And it's such a sign that you're evolving as a writer. Like I remember when my editor at my publishing house said to me, like, when we were getting the book ready for publication, and he said, like, the second half of this one character, the voice is so much stronger because you've like written yourself into knowing him. And he said, I need you to go back to the beginning and sort of like lift it up to match. And I was like, okay, I can do that. But it's such a sign that your writing is
yeah.
evolving. So I love it. Oh my gosh, this has been so good. Any closing words? I know we did that like 10 minutes ago, but
Yeah. I mean, I thank you.
Mm. Thank you for showing up and just being so transparent and yeah, and just for entering into the process so fully. It's really been a joy to have you.
It's been wonderful.
Thank you.